This lecture is about flexible weapons. Flexible weapons, as name indicates, are flexible. They are not stiff one piece of a weapon. They sometimes can be one flexible weapon body, but sometimes it can be made of several parts, like this nunchaku. We have half stiff, half flexible, right? We have stiff parts, stiff handles, but we have flexible chain or lace in this case in between. So the important about flexible weapons is that by themselves they can't deliver force. Because of the flexibility, if I just touch this whip, it will just bend. It doesn't have any torque inside, and it doesn't deliver it. What I really want to do with flexible weapons is keep them in motion. The important thing is keeping them in motion and never stop. If I stop the movement, I lost all the force, all the power of this weapon. I must keep long swings. The moment I stop, I lose the power of the strike. So first rule about flexible weapon is keep them in motion unless you want to stop them. The second thing about flexible weapons is that we need to keep the movement smooth and continuous. Otherwise we will hit ourselves with the weapon. The third thing about the flexible weapon is that we need to understand not the balance of the weapon, because it's sort of irrelevant, but understand the frequency of the weapon. If I will try and move this whip with a short movement, see, it will be disharmonious with itself. This short whip I need to move with a long frequency. Long movements, not short movements. So it's very important to understand the frequency of the weapon. This nunchaku, for example, again I need to keep long frequency movement. I can't do short movement. I can do short movement if I'm doing short movement like this, but then the holding is different. A lot of parameters are relevant to this frequency. The length of the weapon, I have this lace in my hand, and if I want to have long frequency, I need to make it short. Short frequency with my hand, long distance with a belt. So the length of the weapon, the weight of the weapon, the structure of the weapon, is it half flexible or fully flexible, are very important for understanding the frequency of the weapon, the frequency of the motion of the weapon. The most basic feature, characteristic of flexible weapons is the frequency, not the balance, the frequency of the motion, not movement, motion. Flexible weapons can be held single-handedly, like this whip. With my both hands, right? It's not in the right frequency of the weapon. And I use the word frequency because this is what it is. We want to apply wave motion into the flexible weapon, and waves have frequency. Every weapon is singular, and you need to take it and hold it to understand if you can wield it with both hands. This flail, for example, is very heavy at the end. I can wield it with my both hands if I want to. It's not built for it, it's not heavy enough for me to use two hands. But heavier flexible weapons can be wielded with two hands. The three-section staff, for example, of the Shaolin is two-handed flexible weapon. Another way of wielding a flexible weapon with two hands is like this. When I take the weapon and I separate my hands, separate direction, and I apply tension into the flexible weapon. So I make it stiffer and I can work with my both hands, and I will show you how later. Another sort of holding we have with flexible weapons is two weapons wielding, and then we work simultaneously with both weapons. Let's check out what direction we can apply with flexible weapons. I have a lot of weapons here, we'll try them all. It's just examples, there are a lot of kinds of flexible weapons. So let's try this short whip. Of course we have cross direction and we have plus direction. I can also do the same with a handle, as we always use handles of weapons. This is nothing new. I can roll the whip and I can do the back roll. So we have the plus direction, we have the cross direction, we have roll, and we have back roll. Very easy doing back roll with flexible weapons. For obvious reasons, I'm not going to hit Kfir with a whip and show you how it hits. It's very painful. So with whip we have all the directions of attack. How do we defend with a flexible weapon? Of course I can try and hit the weapon. He attacks me with a hammer right now. So I can try and just throw heavy hit with my whip. But I can also just hit him. And this is sometimes much smarter. Instead of blocking him, I can just open some range, because flexible weapons give me range, and just hit his face. So defense directions are similar to attack directions. I can do whatever I can do with the whip in attack, also in defense. I can't strike like this forward, but I can make some short wave motion and hit him forward with whips. So I have all the direction on defense. I can strike the cross, all the same as with the attack, for the cross and the plus. If I want to use rolls in attack and defense, it's the same. I actually hit him. If I want to use back roll, it's more difficult, because I can't really do this efficiently enough with the short whip. And since we have a lot of different kinds of flexible weapons, I just want to explain the basics. The basic is to check the direction and see if it can work as only as a attack tool or defense tool. So I will show you examples. This was short whip. Let's use a shirt now, shirt or a towel for the same use. It's not the best weapon for attack. I can just do this and hit him, but this is useful for the eyes but not for the body, right? It's just a joke from shower room. So I can use a piece of cloth using my two hands, right? And not single weapon handling. Of course, we have all the directions. All the flexible weapons, or most of them, have all basic 12 directions of attack, because they use the same figure 8 movement. So we can do them all. But how efficient is it is specific to the weapon. But I can use this two hands holding for defense. I'm not staying there. It's not like I'm doing this and I'm staying here. He will just drop the hammer on me. And this will be funny and useful for him, but not as funny for me. So I move, and then I can use it to move on and choke him. For most directions, I can do it. See? I grab his hand, and then I can move on. So I use it as a tool to not getting hurt from his weapon. Diversion and attack. Of course, I can just throw it at him and close distance. So this movement is, well, it is roll, but the point is that I can continue. So this was a piece of cloth, like a shirt or a towel. If I have more standard weapon like a flail, because we are all walking around with flails nowadays on the street, it's a very common weapon. I really suggest it as a self-defense weapon, very discreet, very useful. You will never get arrested with a flail. I don't know laws that forbid walking around with flails on the street. Knives, yes. Flail, no. If you want to get a weapon, get medieval. So, of course, flail I can hold like here or here, and it's different sort of holding because the balance is different, the frequency is different. Again, as with the whip, I can strike with all directions of the X, because this is just figure 8. So I have the horizontal and I have the vertical direction, and I can do rolls and I can do back roll. You see, the movement must be perpetual. I must continue the movement. I can just throw the ball at my target and make it with like stab. I can use the handle to stab. How do I defend with flail? It's not much of a defensive weapon, I just attack him. If he tries to hit me, and I will just try and hit his arm with the ball. I will not even try stopping his weapon. It's not built for it. Maybe if I grab the ball myself and hold it like this, but then what's the use of it? And yet I can do this and I can just throw the ball at him or just poke him with the ball. It's very painful. Very good for self-defense. Very common use. Let's see with the shoelace. This is just a shoelace. So, of course, if I will do this, it will do nothing. If I strike his eyes, yes, it can work. It will, well, hurt his eyes, and then I can just use this as deception, as diversion, and close the distance. If I try to attack with the shoelace, it doesn't matter long or short, I will, well, okay, all the direction of attack, but it's a shoelace. It's not really painful. So, as before, defense, right? He attacks me, I divert his weapon, and just go for the choke. Really, you really don't have to think too long with this. You have this kind of thing in your hand, somebody attacks you, you just I push it into him. Pay attention, I pull my hands apart to have tension in the weapon, and then I can block with it, and I flip my hands and move and choke him. Of course, shoelace is a very good weapon for chokes. Belts or long whips again have all the directions of attack, with a stabbing direction of this. With long whip, unlike belts, they have stiffer structure and heavier structure, and you can actually do long whip movement. With this belt I can't, it's not heavy enough. So if you want to have long distance wave propagation, you need to have heavier weapon. Otherwise the energy dissipates over range and it gets nowhere. See? It gets nowhere. With a long whip it would hit him. and I don't need to remind you from history what people used to do with long whips. For defense, same as before. I pull the belt, again, 1, 2. Of course, I can use any flexible weapon when I use this sort of block, not only to grab his neck for chokes, but I can use it to grab any part of his body. I can grab his leg. I can grab him. 1, 2, see, I can just pull and use it to create leverage over him. So it doesn't really matter what to catch, you can always do this and catch the weapon again and just do what you want. So it requires some resilience to use flexible weapons, not standard flexible weapons. I never trained with nunchaku, so what I do is I'm taking the weapon, I try it, I feel the frequency. I do long movement and short movement, and I try to understand what can I do. With nunchaku I can do short movements if I hold it up here. If I hold it here, I can't do short frequency. If I hold up here, I can do short frequency. See? And this is like my almost first time I'm touching nunchaku. If I'm holding it at the end, so I can do long frequency movements. So let's see, what can I do? What direction of attack I have? I have the X, of course I have the plus, and you see, if I want to turn from up downwards direction to down upwards direction, I'm not stopping the weapon. I do this and do some sort of figure 8 to change direction. So I can roll, and I can roll again. I can back roll and back roll again. I can stab with it. I can pull with it, and I can also press it and choke it. Nice weapon. Of course I can use the handle part, as always. I can take his hand here, I can strike his groin and then lift his leg. For defense, of course I can hit him in the same direction of attack, but then it's attack. See, I can pull, I can put the weight, drop the weight over his hand, but it's more like attack than defense. And again I can do this and continue just like with the weapons before. So this is just an example of how I approach weapons. I really don't know how to use nunchaku because I never trained with it, and yet it's an object I take and I understand how can I use it. Just by how can I use it well enough without training. Of course, if you want to be really good with something, you need to train. Chains are extremely heavy in their entire length, and they have consistency in the weight. Unlike whip that goes thinner and thinner to the end, here we have very constant physics. So of course I can use it as whip. It's very painful, so I'm very gentle with him, but I can use it as a whip, and I can just use it in any direction I want. Sidewise, up, downwards, cross direction, of course rolls and back rolls. Of course I can use it to pull him. Unlike with other weapons, if I take chain, I can use it to reinforce my fist and hit him with the chain as is, and then open it up again. And I can use it for defense as a bracer, as defense on our forearms. So, just like this, because this is metal, and I can use it actively for defense. Of course, I can use it for defense, again, the same idea, but this weapon is heavy enough, so I can just throw it on the weapon and unbalance him because of the extra weight of the chain. So I can use the same direction I use for attack for defense purposes with the chain. I can, of course, dual wielding chains. And then it makes it even more offensive weapon. Again, very common, very legal for self-defense. You can just walk with your bracelet, with your chain bracelet. So where do we want to hit with flexible weapons? Everywhere. Everywhere on the body is a target. It depends, of course, on the type of the weapon. The whip and the shoelace won't hit the same. So if I want hits, I need heavier weapon, and of course then everywhere is a target. If I want manipulation, I need more flexible weapon, and then I can do manipulations on him, such as tying him up, which always funny. So we want to use whatever we can, and the flexibility of the weapons gives us flexibility in where to hit. With what part of the weapon do we hit? Again, with every part of the weapon. I can use the handle of the whip, I can use the body of the whip, I can use the tip of the whip. It depends on how painful I want the hit to be, and where I hit and what I hit. If I defend against the weapon and I want to be heavy on his arm, or if I want a quick strike to his eyes. Depend on what I want to achieve. Same with the shoelace. If I want to strangle him, I will use the body of the shoelace. If I want just to throw it to the eyes, I will use the ends with a plastic cover to hit his eyes. So it really depends on what you want to do, and every part of the weapon can hit. So, as with all weapons, we have 4 motoric principles we use. We have figure 8, and with flexible weapons, this is the bread and the butter of the weapon. I don't think there is a single movement with flexible weapon that is not a figure 8. And it depends on the weapon. The frequency depends on the weapon. See, figure 8, the down upward, the up downward direction. And that's all we have. Everything else, this is figure 8. And the opposite direction, this is figure 8. The chasing hands principle is of course valid, especially when we are using dual wielding, and then we actually have a chasing hands principle, or when we are using weapon like this belt, or a rope, and a dart rope for example, or meteor hammer, and the 3-section stuff. So we have weapons that require use of chasing hands. without dual wielding, when we are two hands wielding. We have separation of directions when we pull this weapon and apply tension into it, the soft like shoelace and belt weapons. Then we have separation of directions, and when we close and make manipulation like strangling, we have same direction. So we can apply all the four principles to flexible weapon, but the primary principle is a figure eight. It's very hard to demonstrate flexible weapons on people. I will use this flail for demonstrations. Of course I won't use this flail for demonstrations, because this is stupid and dangerous and just causing pain. So I will use this belt to demonstrate. We can strike forward, we can coil the weapon and pull, strangle. It just depends on the situation. Just grab his limbs. Of course, with a heavier weapon like the flail or the whip, it's very painful. This is a soft belt, it's not painful, so I can demonstrate it. So, just to summarize, the main idea of flexible weapons here is that you need to keep them in motion, to keep them move and pay attention to the motion of the weapon. Pay attention to the frequency. Is it short or long frequency? With long weapons I can do short frequency. See? This is the frequency. With short weapons I can do long frequency. I can't use this whip to do short frequency, it's just disharmonious, but I can use long frequency and then it will be harmonious. The movement is continuous, it's perpetual movement. I'm not breaking it here. I keep going, so it can keep and hitting. Of course, I'm very gentle with the whip, not to hurt him. But obviously, I will lose the movement and it will be more painful. I'm very gentle with it, just to show you.